So, House the Dragon episode 9. And where was I with this episode? I did part 1 so long ago now that I can barely even remember what was happening. So allow me to do a quick refresher. The King Viserys had died in the middle of the night and people were walking slowly through dark corridors to sombre music. So it's dark, depressing, with sombre music. It rarely stands in contrast to the brightness and happiness of the rest of the show. I mean, seriously, I've listened to blues music that's more upbeat than this series. Go and find some Muddy Waters and tell me it isn't more upbeat than this. Maybe Mannish Boy. God, that song's good. Or maybe Smokestack Lightning by Howlin' Wolf. When the series Reacher opened up with that, that was an instant plus for me. I may review that series at some point. After quite a lot of crying, Alicent goes to her father to tell him about the king, naming Aegon as heir before his death. And between them, they want to keep things quiet so they can move before the information gets out. The servants are locked in the cells, and Princess Rhaenys, who's still in the city, is locked in her room until they can find out whose side she's on. There's a council meeting called, and the council are told about the king's death and the king naming Aegon as heir. The council already has a plan. It appears they've been plotting behind Alicent's back about what to do upon the king's death. Lord Beesbury is not at all happy at the plotting. He says it's treason. He stands up and angrily yells that he will have no part of it, and Kristen comes up behind him, rams him down, smashing his head into the table and killing him. And it reminds me of the goofy ass death of Qyburn in season 8 of Game of Thrones. I would do a compare and contrast, but I somehow doubt YouTube would take kindly to be putting up 2 deaths on their website, even if they are fictional. The Lord Commander of the Kingsguard is angry at Sir Criston and draws his sword. And if the Lord Commander's name's Westerling, why does he have a Scottish accent? And where was he and his sword last episode when Daemon killed someone intentionally in the throne room? But no, not a peep when poor old Will Johnson was getting killed. And talking about that, there was this cancer article in BuzzFeed that I found where people were gushing in admiration and some other ways at Daemon murdering that guy for his wife. There were people turned on by that. There were women saying that after they saw that scene, they had to go and change their underwear. Quite how far off the rails have we got in terms of morality when there are people lusting after a murderer? There do seem to be an unhealthy amount of women who are very turned on by the idea of a man who will commit violence on their behalf. And I'll just let that sink in. People saw Daemon kill a man for saying a pretty truthful insult about his niece wife, and they found it hot. So the council just carry on the meeting with poor dead Lord Beesbury just still sat there in his chair. And the Queen asks, what about Rhaenyra? And her father tries to lie to her face. He says the princess will be imprisoned. Made to swear an oath of loyalty to Aegon, but Alicent sees right through his lies. She knows that the council are plotting to kill Rhaenyra and Daemon, and Alicent will hear nothing of it. In retrospect, I'm not sure why Otto didn't try to have Rhaenyra killed decades ago. As soon as his daughter had a son with the king, that he wanted to be heir instead of Rhaenyra. Now, her death is the only way to avoid a war, and even then, she's married with kids now, so it may not end even with her death. It's not nice, but it is understandable from Otto's perspective. In universe though, none of this makes a lot of sense. Rhaenyra is clearly a better candidate than Aegon. Aegon is an unstable rapist. And why would anyone murder people in order to put him on the throne? He'd do a bad job, he doesn't even want the job, and he's a piece of shit. You're putting a rapist on the throne. Otto tries to send the Kingsguard to go and kill Rhaenyra and Daemon, and the leader of the Kingsguard refuses, saying that he only obeys the king and currently there isn't one. So he leaves after stepping down from the Kingsguard. Meanwhile, Aegon is missing and a race starts to find him. Whoever controls Aegon controls the throne, so Otto and Alicent both want him badly. Otto sends Sir Eric and his brother Aric to find Aegon while he does loyalty tests on the lords at King's Landing, wanting them to swear loyalty to Aegon instead of Rhaenyra. Several refuse and are led away to an uncertain fate. One man loyal to Rhaenyra pretends to bend the knee so he can later run and tell Rhaenyra what's happened, but he's stopped and arrested at the gate. Alicent sends Sir Criston to find Aegon, and Aegon's brother Aemond goes with him to look, as he claims to know where Aegon goes. He takes Criston to a brothel that Aegon once took him to, and Criston does not approve, saying, "Every woman is an image of the mother to be spoken of with reverence." And, sorry, I was just flashing back to Sir Criston a few episodes ago, calling Rhaenyra, what was it again? Let's say he called her a spoiled runt. That was episode 6, I think, so he's changed his tune a bit since then. A woman at the brothel tells them that Aegon hasn't been there in years, that his tastes are less discerning now, so Criston and Aemond have got no idea where he is. Meanwhile, after some searching, Eric and Aric end up in a fighting arena that Aegon allegedly frequents, where they do a version of cockfighting with specially sharpened children. And yes, you heard that right the first time, specially sharpened children. The proprietors of this fine establishment sharpen their teeth and nails and have them fight each other. And what is this scene even doing here? What's the point of any of this? What purpose does this serve in the plot? Just to show that Aegon is not a nice guy, because I already got that from the rape. The children are 10 years old and they sharpen them to make them more formidable in the ring. But in truth, how formidable can you make a 10-year-old child? This is just gratuitous nonsense. There are good reasons why people do dog fighting instead of fighting children. Children get a lot more heat from authorities when they're made to fight to the death. 10-year-olds are not really fighters in the first place. A dog will be mature and ready to fight in a couple of years. So where are the children for this even coming from? Are they raising babies up to 10-year-olds just for this fight? Or are they just getting kids off of the street? Sadly, either way, I still don't think it works. Meanwhile, there's more sad music as the king's body is wrapped and Alicent sobs. Alicent then goes to Rhaenys and asks for her support, trying her best to convince her, and it's a pretty good scene. Alicent leaves, locking her in until she's made a decision. Meanwhile, Eric and Aric have a lead. In the arena, they're approached by a woman there on behalf of a mystery person called the White Worm, and they claim to have Aegon, but want an in-person meeting. Otto goes to see the White Worm, who says she can give Aegon to him for a price. And that reminds me of an interesting film. Did you ever see that movie? It's called The Lair of the White Worm. If you've never seen that film, it's a bit of a time capsule, and it holds up quite well for a relatively low budget horror flick. Like I say, it's a horror from 1988, starring a young Hugh Grant before he did 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and a young Peter Capaldi long before he was Doctor Who. It also had Amanda Donoghue being very sexy in it. And it also had a small role for the actor Paul Brook, who you may recognise as the Bantha Keeper in Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. That film brings back some good memories. Do you remember when films were interesting? When someone could make a piece of art without a committee of scolds coming along to make it anodyne and rubbish? Do you remember when people made films and just tried their best to make them good and entertaining? No? Can we go back to that?